Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva. It's always nice when a past guest stops back in to kind of update us on what they're up to these days. And our old buddy, Carolyn Bridget Kennedy, is joining us here from Canada. Carolyn, of course, a Canadian actress, writer, producer, director, creative force behind Demure Duchess Pictures, the company that she founded a few years ago, and she is always busy, and she has some exciting news and things to share with us. But before we get to Carolyn, we're going to take a look at a little clip from one of her projects, Danger Pay, which as we speak is in its second season. So why don't we check that out? Danger Pay, Carolyn Bridget Kennedy.
Why does he attract so many weirdos?
My 9-year-old son is growing breasts.
Oh, these are good. Good to the bone. I see they gave you the last cranberry muffin. See you tomorrow.
Woodrow.
All right, we're back, and let's bring on our buddy there, Carolyn Bridget Kennedy. Carolyn, nice to have you back. How are you?
Hello. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
There you go. Oh, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. So, as I said earlier, since you were last here, you are one busy lady, and again, you've been doing a lot of different things. You even did an appearance in a movie that I just wanted to kind of bring up because it caught my ear. You did a Bollywood romantic comedy. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, I did. It's a very fun project to be a part of. Of course, Bollywood is a massive film industry, and to have an opportunity where there was a co-production involving a Calgary producer was really, really an interesting opportunity. So I actually didn't audition for the role. I got contacted on social media and asked to just be on set for this particular part. And they wanted a cheerful, enthusiastic Canadian immigration officer who, of course, was all bought in by this romance that was kind of trying to be sold by the lead couple. So it was a really phenomenal experience to be around these mega stars in the Bollywood industry. As I left the day of shooting that day, my taxi driver actually recognized the actor that I had the scenes with and asked me, "Oh my goodness, are they shooting a movie here?" Because that's Sakawat Naz, apparently a superstar in the Bollywood movies.
So now the movie was done in Canada. Again, was it an issue of cost factors? In other words, as opposed to maybe doing it overseas, or no? How did that play out?
I believe some of the scenes were shot in India as well, and then the rest of the scenes were shot here in Calgary. It was a love story, and the setting of Calgary was kind of crucial to the story because this young Bollywood actor was coming over to, his character was coming to Canada to try to meet a woman and become a Canadian citizen. So the Calgary skyline and kind of the whole backdrop of it played a significant part in the story.
And now, even though, again, you were just on the set for a short time, but I'm just curious with the influx of successful movies from Bollywood, which, again, for those who don't know, I assume it's basically Indian productions. I don't know that it includes other countries like Pakistan or et cetera, et cetera. But again, what any differences that you saw as far as how they work, how they shoot a film, or is it pretty standard stuff?
Well, while the producers and the director and the writing team were all from India, while it was taking place here, of course, it was a Calgary production crew that was involved with shooting, so I definitely recognized some of the faces behind the camera, working on lighting and assisting the camera director and all that. So it was kind of an opportunity to see a mix of both worlds coming together. Calgary's got a very, close film industry, and people are very well trained here. We've got a number of major series that shoot here, including Fargo Season 3, Emmy-nominated series again for a number of awards. So we have a crew that really knows what they're doing here, and of course, trained actors who know how to fill in these roles when big projects like this come to town.
Sure. Again, Carolyn joining us, and her first scripted comedy called Danger Pay, again set in a small law firm. We saw a quick teaser on that, a couple of different scenes. Writer, producer, lead actress, plays the character Michelle Scott, a paralegal who accepts a job that pays more than usual to work for a bizarre lawyer. And I would say that obviously you're, I assume, writing the lion's share of the scripts, but he is quite an interesting character. Tell us a little bit about the gentleman actor who plays your boss.
Sure. Brent McIntosh is a Calgary actor who plays Woodrow Swallow, the boss in this show. Brent and I actually took an acting class together for about a year, and we were training together regularly. So as I was formulating this web series and getting this idea together for this comedy that I wanted to shoot, there were just certain aspects or moments that I got to see and learn about Brent that I felt he would really exhibit, the unusual nature of this character and the comedic timing of that. Typically, he gets cast in a lot of rougher types of characters. He was on Hell on Wheels, and he also recently played Ronald DeFeo Jr. in a kind of true crime reenactment thing, which is from the Amityville horror genre. So he gets cast in a lot of those things. He was thrilled to do a comedy. And of course, Brent and I were both nominated for Outstanding Lead Actor and Lead Actress in Los Angeles. So I had the privilege of traveling together with Brent to Los Angeles to go to Sony Studios and witness the work that we had done on this project together in my house, actually, on the big screen in Sony.
I know I was going to say, before we get to Los Angeles, you must have quite a house there, because it seems like you're able to kind of convert it into a lot of different things. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the super speed dates. One of the major scenes in there is set in a room that again has been used on other occasions. It's amazing, with just a little tweaking here and there. I'm sure it's more than just a little, but how you guys can really transform and create an image of a place that is totally different than what the room looks like.
Yes, and that's actually kind of a fun part of being an independent filmmaker and working, on your own budget of things without having, the big Hollywood budgets to do things and build sets unique to projects. You have to be really creative, and that actually makes things, I think, a lot more interesting when you have to figure out how to use different areas and frame it a certain way so that it appears like something else, and borrow pieces of things from other corners of the house and put them in so they kind of look like a new environment. It's definitely a challenge to do that, and it's a lot of fun. It really, exercises your abilities as a filmmaker.
Now, on a small production, again, I know on big productions, television, and I know friends and family members, we do this all the time, where sometimes we're not looking to do it, but we pick apart like a scene or something where you can tell that there's some continuity issues. I guess they call them continuity people, or maybe it's a continuity assistant or something. But again, how do you handle it? Is there someone on your crew that kind of makes sure that something is where it was when you stopped taping or took a break for a retake or something? How do you guys handle that with a small budget production?
Yes, absolutely. I have a script supervisor, and my script supervisor who's working on set follows the script closely to make sure the dialogue is matching according to what's written on the script. That way, if one of the actors, steps off the dialogue in some way, they can note, okay, on that take, we can't use that because they jumped over 2 lines or whatever the case is. They're also watching continuity at the same time. So you may have 2 separate people watching that on a larger production, but in our production, I had my script supervisor also watching continuity. So she would definitely take, photos, for example, of the desk in episode 1 and see where everything was placed. So then if we had to go back and shoot it a second time, we knew where everything was positioned and how. So you run with a lot of photos on a, iPhone camera that you're shooting off of to refer to continuity. Also having a wardrobe person. I had a wardrobe person on hand for episodes 4 to 6, which was extremely helpful because in 2 days we were shooting 4 different episodes, and they were all shot in completely different orders of things. So I think the final scene in episode 6 was actually the first scene of the day on the first day of shooting. So, you kind of jump around the timeline, and you have to always remember, is this a day now or is it the next day? Which outfit was this person wearing? Did this person have their bag when they were leaving, whatever it is. So super speed dates was probably the largest challenge of the continuity for the script supervisor, because we had 11 actors and 3 background people. So you're watching a lot of different people moving, and where was this person standing when we shot, the far away scene? Where are they now that we're doing the close up on this table? There's all those kinds of things you have to manage. But, people chip in and keep an eye on things. And I think we were really fortunate with how it turned out.
Pretty big undertaking. A story that I read several years back of something where you definitely needed a person or persons like that was the old American TV show My Three Sons, which I don't know if you recall that show, but it starred a well-known actor, Fred McMurray, and he was a widower with 3 sons, and he had a father-in-law or father that was kind of like the Uncle Charlie or Bub originally. And apparently Fred liked to golf a lot, so Fred basically had it in his contract that he would do a lot of his scenes like ahead of time. And this was when they were taping 39 episodes. So you can imagine, the continuity nightmare where all of a sudden, they had to match this and that because, Fred might have done his scenes weeks ago for like episode number 26 because he was hardly ever there. You didn't realize it, but a logistical nightmare. And of course, those were the old days of, television in Hollywood. So again, I can only imagine. The bigger the cast, the more work is involved, for sure. If you ever do a remake of Ben-Hur, then I want to see this. I want to see how many people are in that shot.
And I think it's important too to realize, if you do have someone who picks up on, a continuity error in a film, they're usually a super fan of the project. I had to rewatch one of the scenes that somebody had mentioned to me in Pretty Woman, where Richard Gere is sitting on a picnic blanket, and there's actually a plot point where he takes his shoes off, so he's trying to be really comfortable in this movie on the blanket with Julia Roberts' character, and then a few seconds later they're filming this again, and he has his shoes back on, and they weren't off anymore. So
exactly, and one that I see all the time in Dirty Dancing. Now, I could be wrong, but there's a scene where Johnny, the character played by the late Patrick Swayze, has a stack of 45s, and in kind of an anger, he puts them back in the metal insert where people used to put their 45s, and you kind of hear him slam them down. But then they go to another shot, and now he's got the same thing. Now, unless someone tells me, well, he had another stack of 45s, but if that's the case, he grabbed them awfully fast, and then
yes.
and so something as obvious as that, but yet when the film was finally edited for release, no one caught that. So I always, as you said, when a person is a fan of a certain movie or TV show, I think they're more in tune to catching those things. The difference is they're not getting paid to catch it. The ones that should have caught it didn't catch it. So, all right, Carolyn Bridget Kennedy, actress, producer, writer, a jack of all trades for sure, joining us here for the hour on Studio 411. Her latest projects, Danger Pay, as well as the short film Super Speed Dates that we'll be talking to Carolyn about in a little bit, as well as seeing some more brief clips. Tell me now about the trip to Los Angeles. I know I saw a lot of images, photos. You had quite a good time down there. Tell me, first time in Los Angeles or no?
It was my first time in Los Angeles. I'd been once before to California, but to San Francisco. So I'd always had this goal of getting to LA at some point. Of course, it's, in this field, kind of the center of where a lot of things take place and the heart of the business. So I kind of have this, image of things, and you see all these different things on television that you're familiar with, and but I'd always kind of been told, don't go to Los Angeles just to go to Los Angeles. You should go because you've been invited. And I waited, and I kind of thought, I hope my opportunity comes someday to be invited. And sure enough, I got this notification email that Danger Pay had been accepted into the LA Web Fest, which is the longest running web series festival in around anywhere, but centered out of Los Angeles. So I believe this is their 9th year coming up. It was held at Sony Studios, so the screening of my show was in the Jimmy Stewart Theater and the Cary Grant Theater was where my screening was held the awards show was held after the screening was done. So it was really a unique experience to get to be on the Sony lot and see where, obviously greats had walked before me, and to be able to feel like I was welcome there. The gates opened up, the security guards were like, welcome, you belong here. It was just really, really neat to see that. And of course, just being involved in, the film industry there and getting to see things firsthand was very unique. So it was a 3-day web series festival, and I was asked to participate on 3 different panels. One was Women Warriors of the Web Series World, and another one was producing and acting in your web series, and then how we produced our web series in Canada. So we were on a panel of Canadian content creators, but there was essentially creators from every continent around the globe, as far as ways New Zealand and Korea. So there were a lot of different places, Europe, of course, well represented. But it was neat to see the essence of story bringing together, and these, content creators who are making simply because they want to create something.
Now, besides the experience of being in Los Angeles and getting a little bit of notoriety, et cetera, being on those panels, or even if you had just been in the audience listening, but being on those panels with some of your contemporaries, what did you take away? I mean, I'd like to think when we go to a presentation or a seminar that we all come away with a different take on something. What did you get from some of your contemporaries, not only from Canada, but throughout the world, about how they do what you do?
Well, it's very interesting to see. Obviously, story is kind of synonymous around the globe and well represented, and people had different takes on the way they did things. There were certainly some web series that were represented that were similar. Perhaps the biggest takeaway would have been by the web series founder. His name is Michael Ajacque, and he actually used to be a writer on television, and then he ended up creating his own web series. From this web series he created, he basically did a first season. Following the first season, he knew this, kind of discovered the characters, found out a little bit about what was happening between the characters and what types of things were working and not working. And from there, he ended up making his own television series. So he actually took his own matters into his own hands, wrote and shot, I believe, 6 or 8 episodes of television, and he just sold them to BET. So on the Black Entertainment Network, there's showing now his show, which was born out of a web series. But the biggest takeaway from that would be that, you can't take a web series and basically make longer episodes and put them on television and expect them to work. They're different mediums, and you have to do an adaptation. Much like if I were to go see a play, I couldn't go and take my video camera, record the play, then put it on TV and say, now it's a movie. It has to be adapted like a book to television series, anything like that. So it's interesting because I'm going through the process now of working on Danger Pay and adapting it as a television series. And definitely I see, the world is expanding. There's new characters that have come into play. There's deeper personalities going on for the leads of Michelle and Woodrow. Backstories are evolving. It's really a whole different world that you find the treasure in your web series project that you made.
The first web series I remember, and unfortunately I don't recall the name, I remember Megan Mullally, and I want to say, the comedian who used to have her own talk show, Chelsea, you know what I'm talking about?
Chelsea Handler?
Chelsea Handler, and I think there was one other woman on there. It was started as a web series, and then a few years later, it graduated to a sitcom. I think not necessarily all those ladies participated. I think Mullally did, and then it ran on ABC, and for whatever reason, it was not a big hit. But so I don't know what the reasons were. Maybe it just didn't, in terms of expanding the length of it. Maybe it didn't. The scripts weren't what they should have been. But I mean, do you worry about that now to take something that maybe is, 5 to 11 minutes, and now somebody says, well, we want to turn Danger Pay or even one of your older projects, the Bridget Linden Show. Now we want it 22 minutes, 24 minutes. I mean, it sounds like, just snap a finger and add some more dialogue. But, it has to keep the viewer's interest. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, you kind of need to build a core, family of friends or family of the show, recurring characters that will be on week after week, so you can have multiple storylines that are going on. So it's definitely much more in depth. But it's been a very interesting, experience going to that level and exploring to see what comes out of it and what little gems you find in what you've already done.
Now, when you write your scripts, because again, I would say 100% of the scripts for these projects come from you, or do you ever
Yes.
so there's usually not a co-writing credit unless someone maybe makes a suggestion at the reading table or something like that?
I am the writer of all the episodes, and Richard my husband has worked together with me as story editor. So I kind of do the initial creative draft on things and get the storyline out of what's happening. Then he and I will sit together and we'll kind of go through the story and see what's working and maybe what's not working. I did do read-throughs on all of my scripts as well. So I called Brent over and, kind of worked off of all the lines and had somebody else reading, the other characters' lines that were in the scenes. So we just wanted to get a sense of how things felt. And I would say there were a few little things that came to me to change after the read-through. And probably about a week before we were shooting the episodes, there were 2 scenes where I felt like I needed something else. There was something missing. And it was simply in the middle of the night. One night I just, got up in the middle of the night, came up with this idea, went back to sleep, and I had known now what these particular lines were going to be that were missing out of the script. So,
but at that point, you still had time to call the principals in, even if it was just you and the gentleman who plays your boss, to then go back and add a scene or whatever with the continuity, the right clothing, the right scene, the right location to go ahead, or have you ever finished an episode and then said later on, 6 weeks later, wow, that could have been different, or I wish I had done that. I mean, I think we all kind of criticize ourselves to the point where sometimes you just have to say, look, we put it to bed, it's done, I'll use that idea somewhere else.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, you always kind of have ideas on things, but the point of a project is it's not really a project until you exchange it with people. So, for me, getting a project completed, getting it out there for people to view, I can always focus on making the next one better, learning from, mistakes or different things I'd like to improve the next time around. But I've really been trained that, there comes a point where you have to just say, this project is good. I like it the way it is. There's nothing more I'm going to spend on it. It's time to get it out there to, let it do its thing.
Now, while you were in California, I know you mentioned to me off air that you met a few folks. I have not met her, but we're working on getting her on the show, which was total coincidence when you told me this story about having lunch with Judy Norton, who many might remember from the Waltons television series. So that must have been a kick. And in addition to that, any other notables, either behind the camera, in front of the camera, that you met or said, oh, look, there goes George Clooney. Quick, George, come here.
Well, I think, you get into LA and you're kind of expecting maybe you'll see all these famous people somewhere, but I think you get so in the zone of what you're doing, somebody could walk right by you or be sitting at the next table and, seeing them in real life, you may not immediately recognize them. So I didn't have any celebrity sightings, quote unquote, but I did get to have lunch with a film director that I knew and from Calgary, actually, who's now living in Los Angeles. So that was kind of a nice experience to meet them and have lunch in Pasadena. I did get to have lunch with Judy Norton, and that was arranged by my acting coach that I work with. He ran an acting school out of Vancouver, and I don't know if you know, but Judy Norton lived in Canada for a time, and she actually was teaching acting at this school where my mentor works at. So through that connection, I'd known her online and in social media, but we had never met in person before. So we got to have a lovely lunch with her and, of course, talk about her experience on, being on one of the major network shows at the time when, there were only maybe 3 or 4 channels at any given moment, and, the entire nation was watching these shows, as opposed to the way, content today is so divided. If a show has 1 million views, it's a huge success. Whereas in that day and age, it was far, far greater the viewership they had. So just to hear about the casting process and how that came to fruition and how she began. And of course, she's working on a lot of projects now, producing and writing in that regard. So it's interesting to see her evolution, that she's, still going strong in this business that she loves.
I was going to say that, over the years, both local theater as well as film, television, she's done, her share of producing and involved with scripts and things like that. I think I want to say she's living in in Texas, but don't quote me on that. But seems like a very nice lady, and we're certainly hoping to have her at some point here on Studio 411. Carolyn Bridget Kennedy, actress, writer, producer, joining us, returning for. I told her one more visit and she'll get the gold coin. But right now, Carolyn on her yearly pilgrimage via the internet to join us on Studio 411. For more information on Carolyn and her comings and goings, www.carolynbridgetkennedy.com. All right. While we're at that point, let's check out another clip. We're going to see a clip of Super Speed Dates, a trailer that I found very amusing, and I got a chance to see a longer clip than the one that you're going to see right now. But let's take a little break and let's check out that teaser from Super Speed Dates, a short film that Carolyn was involved with very successfully. Here it is.
Like, what was with that guy with that bag?
Bruce, you brought your bag?
What was in there anyway?
Peter, my suit's in there. I can be signaled at any time.
Oh, what about the skinny guy, Dick? Something seemed off.
Bruce and I were gonna go hit some clubs and do some dancing.
I can't! I have an anger management class.
They weren't that bad.
What's one thing I should know about you?
I have a huge DC comic book collection.
What do you do for a living?
I work for a newspaper.
So what do you like to do for fun?
I like to hang out in my man cave.
Well, that was a lot of fun. I thought that was very well done, and as I told you off air, I got to kick the gentleman that you recruited to play those parts, and I assume they were reading your lines that you wrote. Certainly interesting characters, to say the least.
Yes, it was. It was really neat to go through that process of putting out, a casting breakdown and getting these audition tapes and viewing to see kind of, from the casting director's side and point of view of things, how they look at these audition tapes, and they're looking for that essence of the character that they can deliver to the role in the film. So it was a really unique process to go through to make a film, and of course have 11 actors with speaking roles, and watching them bring together everything that I had written. It was a real joy to see happen, and of course a lot of challenges, because I had written this that it was taking place in an upscale lounge, and to rent a facility to shut down for a day to shoot filming is atrociously expensive. So again, the creative genes had to come into play, and through a lot of set deck and creativity work, we managed to convert the basement to look like that upscale lounge. And I think we did a pretty impressive job on the day. It was really, really beautiful to look at on camera.
Oh yeah, as I said earlier, again, I've seen where it's been used before for other shots, and again, I felt like I was transported right to this lounge, or whatever you want to call it, where the characters were meeting. Again, just for those out there watching, again, Carolyn's first short comedy film, Super Speed Dates, about a group of women who attend a speed dating event and begin to wonder if the men that they are encountering have another side to them. And the sides I saw were rather frightening but that's just one guy watching a bunch of guys, anyway. But the women seem much more normal. I don't know, but yet they seemed as if they were trying to give them the benefit of the doubt.
That's what you have when you have a female filmmaker giving their perspective, I suppose, right?
Yes, and as I told you, I would do a thing, even if it's kind of the same idea, but in another project or another series, where you have that same type of thing, but then look at it from the other perspective, and it reminds me too of movies I've seen where women will make the comment, well, a male must have wrote that, and usually they're right, because they don't capture the essence of what the female, good, bad, or indifferent, is going through. It could be something traumatic, it could be something joyful, whatever. but then the lines, don't really jive. Like I'll give you, for instance, someone who I have a lot of respect for, Nia Vardalos, who did Big Fat Greek Wedding and a series of other movies. I mean, she's somebody I would love to talk to her about filmmaking, because she, really, just is not only reminds me of you in the sense is trying to get a message across, but yet is also very funny. And in her case, you almost can't tell. You think, well, a guy might have wrote that line. She just has a way about her, and I don't know. I don't know whether it's her training or where she got her expertise from. Mm-hmm. So that's something absolutely.
She's a talented writer.
Now let me bring this up here. I saw this recently in the Hartford, Connecticut Current. It has to do with demographics. Women and Hispanics, among others, scarce in films. I wanted to get your comments on this. Recent study finds that Hollywood remains mostly white and male-dominated. Any thoughts on that? Would you agree with that or no?
That's absolutely correct. Actually, there was just a list out. I believe it was the 20 top salaries and top paid actors that are out there for film and television in 2017, I believe. And the list so far is basically showing all males until I believe number 13. Then there's one female on the list. Generally, what they're saying is they're generally not paid as high, females, and I believe it's 25% of speaking roles are female roles. So there's 75% roles on camera that you see are males speaking, and 25% will be females. So already the numbers are outweighing, and I would say with directors, I believe it's around 7 or 8% are female directors. Writers are also significantly low. I believe it's around that 25-30% mark. Producing, I'm not sure what the statistics are, but in general, it's a very male-dominated industry, and I think it's always come from that viewpoint. I don't know necessarily why, but it seems that people in general are more interested in hearing female stories now, and networks are open to giving these female viewpoint stories, whether it's female-driven comedies or action movies. But you'll see 10 versions of Spider-Man and 10 versions of Batman and whatever else, and we've got one Wonder Woman movie. So,
Well, I was going to say that in the article they did say that in 2017, for instance, you named one of them, Wonder Woman, which I believe is getting a sequel and probably will do well for a while. A movie called Get Out, which I don't know, and the other one I have seen a trailer for, a movie called Girls Trip. So they're saying a little bit of movement on that scale, but basically, and this was based on a 2016 survey, 100 of the most popular films, representation by group, films with no characters, females 0, people with disabilities 38, Latino 54, LGBT 76. So out of those 100 movies, 76 no representation. Asian 44, and African American out of the 100, 25, or in this case 25% really, no representation in those movies. So again, and to be honest with you, I'm sure you would agree, yeah, granted there may not be an issue with there being females in the movie, but the level of what their characters bring to the movie is somewhat dubious at best.
Well, even with background, I hear it's always a skewed number of women versus men in a crowd scene, and I'm not sure why that is. I think the population overall is pretty balanced, but I would probably say it resonates back to beginning with the writers. People write what they know, so you're going to have male writers writing what they know, which is stories from the male point of view. It doesn't mean that they can't necessarily write a female point of view, but sometimes it ends up being a little a flat perspective, like the nerdy girl who's actually kind of pretty, or the girl who's kind of the girlfriend to the main actor. She's just kind of a piece of furniture around the male character. And I think nowadays you have writers that are paying more attention to make sure that the female actors or actresses that are portrayed in film are a little more dimensional and have a voice to say or an opinion to say, other than just being decoration on the film.
Sure. And I thought of you because, again, not only you work behind the camera, and I think that you're going to be getting into more directing, if my hunch is correct. Behind the camera, things continue to be dismal for female directors. Again, for the survey, going back to 2016, there were only 5 female directors out of 120, and that includes co-directors. and none were black. And this was again from Lindsay Baer, Associated Press, demographics of women in Hollywood, again remaining mainly white or mostly white and male dominated. So obviously your Tom Cruises of the world, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was just thinking the other day, Cameron Diaz, again, maybe by choice, I haven't seen her in a movie. I haven't seen quite a few actresses. Ellen Barkin, another one I just saw a clip of. Haven't seen her in a movie. I mean, it's scary. And then when you do, sometimes you see these actresses. There was one a few years ago with Tommy Lee Jones and Meryl Streep, and I'm blanking on the title. Two actresses that came to mind, both nominated for Oscars at various points. One was Elizabeth Shue, who had a small part for about 2 minutes, and another one was Mimi Rogers, who played a neighbor, and she was on for about a minute. And I'm thinking, wow, I guess we need a paycheck, because there was no substance to those roles.
Yes, it's interesting, and I think, like I said, it goes back then to writing. If we have female writers who are writing, if they take the initiative to produce their own projects, they can place themselves at the helm to direct, gain experience under their belt directing, and then they have something to offer to existing projects where they maybe tend to cast known directors that they know of, and probably all the ones they know of are male. It's just kind of the way the industry is going. But I think it's a responsibility for females, if they want to be directing and taking the initiative to do that, create a project and make yourself the director and get that experience you need.
Question, would you, and if there was a project that was something, again, Hollywood-based, that was not a creation of yours, and it was a movie where you were required to do some sort of nude or partial nude scene, would that be something that you would consider, or would you say, I can't do this project?
Well, I guess would depend on the role or the project that's involved. I think, unless it's going to be for a purpose in the story, as opposed to gratuitous just for the sake of, I could understand that. I actually had an audition for a role, I believe it was in Florida at the time, and it was playing, an engineer, an astronaut actually in space, and awakening, out of this slumber from this cryogenic pod. And of course, emerging from the cryogenic pod, it would have been nude, emerging from there, and then clothing and getting dressed. And I kind of thought about it, and I thought, well, she wouldn't be in this cryogenic pod floating in goo, probably in, a bunch of clothing. So it's essential to the character, and it helps the story go along. I'd have to give it some consideration. Is it something that I'm, thrilled to do, and I would be, looking for that particular role? It would have to really be the right project.
Covered in goo, okay. If that comes to fruition, I don't know. Can we have a clip of that? No. No, I was going to say, well, even astronauts have to take their uniforms off sometime. But again, I'll have to see that, regardless of who plays the film, for sure. Carolyn Bridget Kennedy joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. Some of her latest projects, Danger Pay, as well as Super Speed Dates. I had asked you off air about when I first knew you were doing the Super Speeds Dates, and I thought, oh, this is going to be another one of her, web series, 6, 12, 15, 20 episodes. And then you said, no, this is basically kind of like a one-time deal in terms of the encounter there. With all the praise and notoriety that it's gotten, would you ever, if someone said to you, well, 10 years from now, we want to take that idea and turn it into like a feature-length movie, 90 minutes, 100 minutes, 110 minutes. Would that be something you would consider, and to expand on, the characters involved?
Yeah, I had actually contemplated and thought about it, how that would look as a feature film if it was elaborated to be, a 90-minute to hour-and-a-half long story kind of thing. And, I kind of came up with a few ideas on where that could go, but I really wrote the piece just to be its own standalone film. I really wanted to have a short film done under my name in addition to web series, so this was my venture in that regard. So, I'm not opposed to the idea. I think it would have to be something that would really awaken my creativity again to want to regenerate it and explore it in a different way that it could, sustain a longer storyline.
In planning that movie, and again, no disrespect to the fine people that acted in the short film with you, but looking back at it, could you envision maybe some Hollywood type celebrities or actors and actresses in those roles, or as you wrote a particular part and then said, well, he or she did a wonderful job, but boy, if I could have gotten, someone to do that. Any names that you said, I would love to see in a feature-length version of Super Speed Dates?
Well, of course, that changes it all to union, and the premise of the project that I had in mind was, of course, giving some resemblance or an appearance to perhaps the actors who have portrayed these superheroes in film before. So, kind of going with what the comic book image would be and say what, Robert Downey Jr., the character that played by him. But I kind of was looking at an actor who would kind of give the essence of that character, the attitude of the character. So it's, kind of one of those things. I actually had two actors that were from Saskatchewan and one from Edmonton. And one of the actors was cast in the project just, I believe, 2 days before we were shooting. We were still looking for our Clark Kent, and we found him down at the last minute. My director was quite insistent that we didn't compromise and put anyone in who didn't live up to Clark Kent. I had a little producer angst, and the director convinced me, be patient, he'll come. Sure enough, he did. So it all worked out.
The best laid plans, other times you're like just kind of spitballing and you get lucky and someone falls right into your lap, for lack of a better word. Now tell me, obviously a big thing that's happened to you since we last visited. You now have been granted a visa, which I know when you were on, I think about a year ago, the second appearance you made with us, we had talked a little bit about, your goal, about doing work in the States. So tell us a little bit about what transpired, and now that now that it's opened up new doors in addition to the fine work you're doing in Canada.
Yes, it has. I feel like a giant gate has been lifted between Canada and the United States. It's just absolutely wonderful to know that I now, obviously have this legal entitlement to work there. It was a lengthy process for sure. I kind of had my eye as a goal, when I started out doing the writing for everything and pursuing acting full-time back in 2014. So it's been kind of a 3-year evolution of working towards this and kind of having an idea of what was needed for that. So after I got the Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy nomination at LA WebFest, that kind of solidified that I probably had enough acknowledgement on my work internationally and in the United States as well. 19 film festival laurels and acceptances for both of my projects. And of course the weight of Bridget Linden, which is almost at 900,000 views. I've been able to prove the requirements that are needed, and now this definitely opens up opportunities. I've had a number of auditions for commercials and films, but of course I've never been able to solidify the deal with anything in the U.S. because the visa is not in the way, and it's, I would say, at least a 4-month process from when it started to when it's granted. And the way projects move along, if they want to hire someone to act, it's usually they want you, next week or in 2 weeks from now. It's not necessarily they'll wait for you for 4 months and maybe see if your visa goes through. So this obviously opens up a lot of doors. I am definitely considering in the new year spending some time, perhaps looking at more opportunities in the States. So we'll see how things go.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just saw a movie, and I hate when I say this, and now I can't remember the name of it. I think it was called I Love Paris. It was a foreign film. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
It's a husband and wife, and apparently they've done 3 or 4 movies. Of course, I'll say, well, on a future show, I'll tell you what that movie was. But anyway, I saw it. It was kind of a French farce. I found it very amusing. The kind of movie that, regardless of what kind of day you've had, if you sit there and watch it with your popcorn and maybe your cocktail, that it just like lightened the mood. And I thought it was so funny. And I thought, I said, this is the kind of movie that, that someone like you would be good at, because again, it was just kind of, I don't know, it wasn't your standard movie. You walked out of there feeling like you were in a good mood. And I just thought, wow, this is good. I was with somebody who didn't like it. They thought it was too much slapstick, and I'm like, boy, given what's going on in our world today, yesterday, and probably tomorrow, I can use a little laughter. But actually, the woman is Canadian, so now see, I should have wrote the name down, but she is Canadian. Yeah, she's Canadian. She's been married to a guy for like 30 some years. she's playing a role that someone who looks supposed to be like 30, and she's nearly double that age. So maybe she just doesn't want to get a new person to play her characters. I don't know. Do you find yourself later on in your career moving maybe more behind the scenes, where let's say you write a film or an idea for a series, television or film, and you said, yeah, you know, I'm a little kind of like Woody Allen and so many others. They kind of say, you know, I better like Clint Eastwood. You know, I can't play those parts anymore. I got to let somebody younger do the part.
Yeah, I think, you know, as a creator and a creative, I'm visualizing stories that are viewpoints that I can tell. So generally, they're going to probably be female-centered storylines. It would depend on the story, and obviously whether or not I felt that I still suited the character. Of course, going to network and looking at, you know, if Danger Pay, how I'm developing it, would get picked up as a television series. Of course, networks have their say as well. And they may say they want, you know, a bigger name actor to portray the character of Michelle. And if that's the case, you know, as a writer and as a producer of this project, I wouldn't let my show die on the fact that I maybe couldn't play the lead character either. So I think I'm kind of open and flexible to it. I do write the projects because I want to have roles. So creating my own roles is a way to do that, a means to an end. But it's also a process that I've really fallen in love with, as with producing and with, you know, learning directing as well. So when I'm coming to directing a film and I undertake that first project, directing on my own, I may not take as large a role in the project solely so that I can focus more on directing and being involved with that, and maybe take a cameo or something to that effect. So we'll see. I mean, it's going to depend on the project.
You'll be like Hitchcock and so many others that I'm trying to think someone again that I just saw in a film where it actually was Clint Eastwood. The movie that he directed of the Four Seasons stories, Jersey Boys, he actually has a cameo in it. They're in a dressing room or someone's home, and this is like circa 1962, 63. And Clint Eastwood, they show an episode of Rawhide, the Western that he was in for about 7 years in the late 50s, early to mid 60s. And there's Clint, you know, and so again, it was very clever. You know, Hitchcock used to do the same thing where he would walk through, and what was the other one? I'll give you a quiz. You're familiar with the movie Princess Diaries?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Near the end of the first one where they're dancing and, you know, she's got her crown and she's now a princess or a princess in waiting, there's a scene where these two people come dancing through the footage. Well, that's director Gary Marshall, who's passed away, I believe, earlier this year, and his wife come dancing, and they do their little Hitchcock thing through the movie. So, you know, people come up with that. I always think it's kind of clever. So there's something for you to do. You can dance your way right through the film.
Yes, exactly. That sounds good to me.
Now, any aspirations to do any theater work?
I actually am interested in doing some improv theater, so that is probably something that's on my schedule this fall. I've been seriously looking into that, and I did one improv course over the summer, and I've quite fallen in love with that aspect of theater at this point. I'm really, you know, in love with the storytelling medium of film and television, and the way that you can capture a story and tell it through this kind of edited way with music coming together and everything in this kind of perfected performance. So as far as regular theater, I don't think that's something that I'm going to pursue. You know, it's one of those things where some people are very good at being theater actors, or they're very good at being film actors, but the two skills that are kind of required for each of them, although character's the same, you know, you can't do a theater type performance on television. You have a camera, you know, focused closely on your facial expression. So when you're performing theater, of course, you're performing to the people in the back row of the theater with your voice and with your facial expressions and your physical mannerisms. And on television, everything is magnified, and, you know, you have to either be very good at one or the other, or have years of experience, I think, knowing how to do both very well.
There you go. Carolyn Bridget Kennedy joining us here for the remaining moments here on Studio 411. For more information, CarolynBridgetKennedy.com. Couple of quick questions before we wrap up and go to another longer clip of some of your work. Actually, quicker answers than I thought. Worst movie you ever paid to see?
Oh, I want to say now it was the last one that Heath Ledger was in that he passed away, and their Dr. Parnassus's something.
Oh, okay, yeah, the one where they got Johnny Depp and yeah.
They did their best to put it together with Heath's passing and having the other characters playing, but I had a real difficult time following it.
Terry Gilliam directed, I believe.
Yes.
Let's see, a person you would most like to work with in the future?
Tina Fey.
Tina Fey, okay.
I think she's very talented writer, female writer, producer, actress. She's kind of doing all those techniques, and I would very much love the opportunity to learn from her and meet her firsthand.
All right, very good. Say, look at that, the stuff we learn here on Studio 411. Yes, now we've got a nice little montage of clips as we end our visit, our recent visit here with Carolyn Bridget Kennedy. As always, I thank you for coming by, and best continued success. And again, next time we want to see an award on your left and an award on your right, so you'll have to get some tables there.
Sure, sounds good.
Very good. All right, hang in there. We're going to see a collection of clips from some of Carolyn's work. We thank you for joining us here on Studio 411. Carolyn Bridget Kennedy has been our guest today. CarolynBridgetKennedy.com for more information. And we wrap up the show with some funny clips from some of Carolyn's work. So while you watch that, we thank you for joining us. Take care.
Yeah, I'm doing okay, I guess. But it's been another odd day here. I field the initial client calls, and I can't believe how many weird calls Woodrow gets. He is a little bizarre, but still. Why does he attract so many weirdos?
I see the judges' dinner is coming up next week. It's nearly sold out, but I called some people I know, and I managed to get you some complimentary tickets.
No. Too many people. I mean, lawyers in one room. I don't have time for that.
I was able to turn it into a national class action, and bubbles galore. Well, they wanted to keep things quiet, so they settled for a big bucket of money. Tell Woodrow, thanks.
I'll be sure to let Woodrow know.
Hey, I'm back.
I left you a voicemail.
What voicemail?
The dry cleaning slip that you left in my office. I assumed you wanted me to pick it up for you. Look, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to go through your stuff. I was...
The look on your face. That's funny.
These speed dating events suck.
I'm glad this night is over.
Amen to that.
It's not that they were all losers. They were all just a little bit odd.
Is sexual compatibility important to you?
Yes. I like pleather. Do you?
You could live anywhere in the world. Where would it be?
Somewhere away from people.
What, like a fortress of solitude?
I think this night decided it for me. I'm not doing this again.
Too many weirdos.
The kind of guys you hear described in the news as being the quiet neighbor.
They weren't that bad. Speed dates are short. Maybe if we got to know them, we'd understand them.
Sure. I can't wait to get into one of their white windowless vans and have a long, meaningful discussion about their lives.